Hello everyone, and welcome to the start of this final project for this channel that I'm calling The Great Criticism. Upon looking at how many different people I have to look at, this might go over my initial deadline of January 1st. So it kind of depends on if I really want to see this series to completion, like 100% completion of what I had in mind, or if I get burned out and I just stop at my January 1st deadline. We will see. But for now, we're starting with FatDoctorUK, and what we're doing is we're going back a year ago and taking a look at all of their TikToks leading up to present day. Now, I started with FatDoctorUK because she stopped posting on TikTok back in May. Something else that I thought was really interesting and that we'll see as we go through is that she gets progressively angrier as the year goes on, and it seems like this is your brain on fat acceptance or something. It's really interesting. So I will make note of that throughout. Something else to notice is that FatDoctorUK made many TikToks in this 1 year, even with stopping prematurely at May. So it may take a couple of parts for us to get through all of her stuff. My goal is to make each video no longer than an hour, because otherwise I don't think I'll be able to post it weekly. That's kind of the overview of it. Let's go ahead and jump in. You'll notice, I want to note this is from August 12th of 2021. She has longer hair, and you'll notice a happier demeanor in her than we'll see later.
Hey TikTok, it's been a minute. I just gave myself a couple of weeks off so that I could rest and recuperate. But I'm back to remind you that being fat is not bad for your health. Yup, you heard me. It's not. Hey TikTok.
Even here though, she still has a little bit of smugness to her. And I like that even as a doctor, she said being fat is not bad for your health. Yeah, so I'm curious, is she a doctor as in a medical doctor or a doctor as in a doctorate? Given her icon, which seems to be like a medical kit or something, I'm thinking it's a medical doctor. She says it's not bad for your health. Nope, it's not. Just like this weird smugness, but then she doesn't say anything to back it up. It's just a claim that she's putting out there.
Hi Rosie, fellow fat advocate. I just wanted to reply to this comment because I think your heart is very much in the right place. Just to let you know that there isn't actually much evidence to support what you're saying. A TikTok video isn't long enough for me to go into it, but if you check out the FAQ section of my website, you'll see a lot more information there and lots of studies that I've linked to support all of my assertions. There is no question that being in a larger body is associated with a number of medical conditions. I'm not going to deny that fact. But I really want to stress once again the importance of differentiating between causation and association. Being fat doesn't increase your risk of health conditions. We need to take a long, hard look at why that is, instead of assuming that it's the fat that causes the problem. Hi, Rosie. Hello.
So, once again, while being a bit smug and maybe just a tad bit condescending, she still seems upbeat here. And this is, from the same day, so no surprise there. Something to note about her website, because I would have gone into that, but I'm guessing that was in her bio, and her bio now says no bio yet. Like, it seems like she just kind of more or less shut down the TikTok, her TikTok page. So I can't look at her website. I don't know what her website originally was, and there's a chance that she shut down the website too. I don't know. Something that's, like, I find it interesting that she's like, hello, fellow fat advocate, but you're wrong. There's resources to back this up. She points you to her page, which is great if she hadn't taken it down. I wish that had been put in the description here, rather than just pointing to her bio or whatever. That's more likely to be changed. But we don't know what studies she's referencing. Given that she seems pretty into the fat acceptance movement, I'm not convinced, even as a medical doctor, she was using up-to-date research, just because she seems, even here, almost a little brainwashed or something. I don't know. And then she talks about, correlation and causation, or I think as she put it, causation and association whatever she used, but I don't really like this argument. I mean, granted, correlation does not equal causation, but you got to take a look at some overarching factors. The vast majority of fat people, no matter what they say, don't eat as well as most thin people typically. But even something bigger is the added stress on their organs from their weight. And there's multiple studies in favor of that. Probably, I would almost, granted, I haven't actually looked these up, so perhaps this is me jumping the gun, but I still feel pretty confident in saying that the number of studies in favor of weight adding to the risk of different conditions far outweighs those that are against that narrative. I find it interesting that the fat acceptance movement completely ignores, for all of their talk about intersectionality in terms of identity, they don't think about intersectionality in terms of medical issues. So let's say that being a heavier weight is not the entire cause of these elevated risks. Let's say there's intersecting factors of stress and lifestyle habits, and you want to separate the lifestyle habits from being fat, which is fine. And that doesn't mean that being fat can't still contribute to these risks. Like, if you want to say that fat isn't the end-all be-all of adding to the risk factors of these conditions, which is true, that's fine, but let's not ignore it completely.
This is part 2 of my video. Watch part 1 if you haven't watched it already. So there are multiple determinants of health. Where you live, your gender, your age, smoking status, alcohol use, socioeconomic group, education level, stress is a hugely important factor. Little things like lack of sleep. Access to healthcare is monumentally important. And it's important to remember that fat folk do not get equal access to healthcare. Their doctors are prejudiced, stigmatising, and provide poorer quality healthcare than they do to their thinner patients. Weight cycling is another one. Chronic dieting has been linked to poor health. There are just so many reasons why living in a larger body is associated with a number of chronic conditions. We've got to stop assuming that it's because of our fatness.
So, again, truth in that there's multiple contributing factors, at least she's acknowledging that, multiple contributing factors to elevated health risks. Totally cool. Some of those, as you'll notice, were not controllable, like age, gender, race. But then there were some that were far more controllable. Smoking status, and whether you drink alcohol or not. I find it interesting that she lists all of those things, and yet she doesn't acknowledge that weight could be in there somewhere. Like, I don't understand why weight is this one mythical creature that cannot contribute to health risks at all, even from a doctor.
Why, yes. Yes, I have.
There's something about her that is a little creepy. Like, definitely and we see that bitterness far more later. And we've officially moved on to August 14th of last year, but anyway, let's move on.
First of all, it doesn't actually correlate very strongly, as you suggest. Second of all, you're lumping a whole bunch of medical conditions together when actually you need to separate them. In terms of diabetes, and by that I presume you mean type 2 diabetes, it's actually the insulin resistance that causes weight gain, as opposed to the weight gain causing insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is almost certainly due to genetics in the most part. Also,
but don't you think that weight could also be a contributing factor in there? Because if it was entirely genetic, why does it not show up at birth? If it were entirely genetic. And I mean, I understand that there's potential factors of environment that could also contribute to either the delay of onset of, say, like a type 1 diabetic. But I don't know, if you want to say that type 2 diabetes is entirely genetic, why did a few generations ago it was seen as adult diabetes? Because it was primarily didn't show up until later in life. But then as we've gotten closer and we've seen far more children being diagnosed with it. So if it were entirely genetic, why the change over a few generations? I'm just curious from, I wish I could ask her this. She has since disabled her comments, for the record. All of these comments, I can't see them anymore. Otherwise, I would show them in this video. And I would show responses too, but she's turned comments off on every single one of her TikToks, so there's no way to look at them.
So by environmental factors too. In terms of heart disease, you are more likely to develop heart disease if you suffer from migraines than you are if you are fat. Look at it.
Well, then I'm fucked. Except I really don't. So, like, I'm sure there is a correlation between migraines and heart disease. I don't know what it is. And maybe there's a stronger correlation between migraines and heart disease, but that doesn't mean that fat doesn't play a role. So I find this, well, this is more strongly correlated, therefore the other thing can't contribute at all, just is terrible logic. It seems like a bad faith argument from a medical professional in my perspective.
In terms of high blood pressure, are you aware that blood pressure is associated with stress? So is weight gain, so that could be the possible correlation. The point is that correlation is not the same as causation, and people need to learn the difference.
I believe high blood pressure, though, can also be mitigated with better diet and exercise. And I mean diet as in the actual medical term of what you eat, or not the medical term, but the actual like definition term of what you eat, not just like the fad diets that we associate when we talk about diets. Even FatDoctorUK, it has a diet, meaning that she has a range of foods that she eats consistently. Stress is definitely a contributing factor, but that doesn't negate the fact that weight could also be a contributing factor, and that weight likely is a contributing factor.
No, it's not. Is being fat associated with osteoarthritis of the knee? Yes. Does being fat cause osteoarthritis of the knee? No.
This seems a bit like bad faith argument, because she's saying, does being fat cause osteoarthritis of the knee? No. Meaning that you can't say definitively that this one factor causes osteoarthritis of the knee, because there's probably a couple of intersecting factors based on cartilage levels in your knees, the amount of time that you've spent at an elevated weight, and potential other things like bone density and that sort of thing. So you can't say that obesity itself causes osteoarthritis of the knee. And I feel like that's what she's kind of getting away with here, kind of taking what they're saying literally. Except she's not even taking what they're saying literally, because they say, so being fat is not bad for your knees. So she's changed their argument, because they're just saying that is being overweight bad for your knees. But she's changed it to be for osteoarthritis of the knees, which is a specific condition, not just perhaps having the elevated weight causes a increased wear down of the cartilage in your knees, or perhaps the additional pressure on your knees is bad for those joints. Instead, she's changed it to this very specific condition, which being overweight could still be a contributing factor for, and yet she's changed it to where it causes it. So I say this is a bad faith argument because she understands this, and she's manipulating the words that she's using to deny what they're saying, and kind of using her title as a doctor as a way of legitimizing her argument. At least that's what it seems like to me.
We most certainly do. Discrimination and anti-fat bias is rife within the obstetric and midwifery community. Check out my friend Nicholas Salmon, who is at Fat Positive Fertility on Instagram. First of all, don't call me babe. My name is Dr. Lamy, or you can call me Natasha. Second of all, I'm not in denial. You're the one that's making assumptions. Just because you live in a larger body and have painful knees does not mean one caused the other.
It doesn't mean that it didn't cause the other either. And if she has been at a lighter weight and therefore the pain in her knees went away, then I would say that she has reason to, at the very least, to say that for her body, being at an elevated weight causes pain for her knees. So I find it interesting that she is just kind of denying that wholesale for this specific person, rather than at least giving the nuance of everybody's different, which is also a little bit of a cop-out, which we will see when we get to Fat Sapphic Bro. but she's almost comical in how she is arguing for the fat acceptance, fat liberation, Hayes movement.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make anyone anxious because they have migraines. I have migraines too. When we look at risk of heart disease, we in the UK use something called a Q risk calculator. You can actually find the Q risk calculator online. Just Google Q risk 3. It basically calculates your risk of developing a cardiovascular event over the next 10 years. And by that, I mean heart attack or stroke or something similar. Takes all sorts of things into consideration: your age, your gender, your postcode. It looks at multiple medical conditions and also looks at your blood pressure, your cholesterol and your weight. I did some calculations myself and wrote a blog post about this because I think it's so interesting. If you take a 50-year-old woman and increase her body mass index from 25 to 40, you increase her risk by 3%. But that same woman with a BMI of 25 has a higher risk if she suffers from migraines. Oh no. In the 1930s, the Nazis convinced the people of Germany that Jews were to blame for all of their problems.
I'm sorry, I gotta stop it here for... Are we comparing being fat today to being Jewish when the Nazis took over? Are we... What? This hurts. This hurts. Oh my god.
It just so happens that my grandfather and my great-grandparents and most of my family were living in Germany during the 1930s. Most of them were slaughtered in Auschwitz. The kind of propaganda that led to an entire nation blaming one group of people for their problems also led to the death of 6 million people. Now, I would never compare the Holocaust to anything else that is going on in the...
Except you just did. You just did by saying being fat is incredibly selfish. So you're responding to this comment. Being fat is incredibly selfish, though, especially when the associated health problems cause extra pressures on the NHS. And then you immediately go into talking about Nazis, which is essentially creating a comparison. So saying that you're not comparing does not negate the initial comparison. I can't.
The world today, because nothing can compare to the Holocaust, but you can't help but draw some parallels.
Drawing parallels is a comparison. It's a comparison. This hurts so fucking much. Why? Oh my god.
Because you had the audacity to blame fat people for the pressures that are on the NHS.
Because fat people typically have more risks and more medical issues. So she's not wrong there, which puts a greater, given their more frequent trips to the doctor, creates more pressures because they take up more evaluation slots for the doctors in the medical system. So I see what they're saying. And yet you go straight to Nazis. I don't...
How dare you? Okay, so we can tell a lot about this individual by his profile name. It fits. Trust me, he's been trolling me for some time. Doctors don't sugarcoat anything. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Anybody who lives in a larger body knows what it's like to go to a doctor and be told to lose weight. Anybody who lives in a larger body knows what it's like to have their symptoms ignored because of their weight. Chances are, if you're fat, you've probably been denied an examination or an investigation based purely on your body weight. If you're fat, you'll be denied routine surgery as standard. You will also be denied fertility treatment. You'll be denied the right to adopt. Doctors don't sugarcoat things. In fact, they are some of the most biased and fat-phobic individuals out there. Not only that, but they are in breach of their code of conduct. That's why I'm standing up against weight stigma.
Okay, but I find it interesting that she talks about them being denied for surgery and being denied for fertility treatments, but then she doesn't explain the reasoning why, as though it's simply because she's fat, which I feel like she's purposely leaving out information to further this narrative of fat acceptance. part of the reason why people are denied for surgeries if they're at a heavier weight is, one, it can be harder to get them off of the anesthesia, and they could need to be intubated if they can't breathe on their own because of the weight on their chest. For fertility treatments, I can't say 100%, but I'm pretty sure that once you reach like a severe weight, there's a chance that during your pregnancy your uterus could rupture, which would injure the baby, kill the baby probably. Like there's reasons why they're denied, so to present it as though they're only denied because they're fat feels disingenuous, especially coming from a medical professional.
That's a good point. And it would make sense if there was no risk in dieting. The problem is that dieting comes with a whole range of negative consequences. First of all, intentional weight loss is actually the biggest risk factor for weight gain. So it's kind of a waste of time. But even if you ignore that, intentional weight loss increases your risk of weight cycling. It also increases your risk of disordered eating. Both of these things are associated with poorer health outcomes. In addition, intentional weight loss has lots of negative emotional and mental side effects. And we have to remember that mental health is as important, or in my opinion, more important than physical health, because you can't have good physical health without good mental health. Yes, if there were...
But without good physical health, you could die, and then your mental health doesn't fucking matter. Like, there's... And she says that, yes, this would be true if dieting had no risk, but the truth is that I'm pretty sure, by and large, literally everything you do comes with some sort of health risk, and it's a matter of, like, balancing the risks. Like, there's a chance that eating fruit could have leftover pesticides on it that could kill you, but the chances of you actually ingesting the pesticides and ingesting enough for it to actually cause you severe harm is incredibly fucking low. There is that, but then her argument of it could be weight cycling which leads to negative health outcomes, I think that perspective of whether weight cycling would be good or bad for your health is still up in the air in terms of research. I don't know for sure though. And then it could lead to disordered eating, maybe for some vulnerable individuals, but I think for a large variety of people it would not. Furthermore, that thing about dieting leading to weight gain, and I hate that the fat acceptance movement groups dieting and lifestyle changes as the same thing when they're not. There's a big difference between fad diets and choosing to eat, for lack of a better term, cleaner, meaning you eat lean meats, veggies, fruit, whole grains, complex carbohydrates. There's a big difference between eating that way and doing a juice cleanse. It just feels, again, disingenuous to me.
No risk to dieting, then why not try it? But since the risks clearly outweigh the benefits, you've got to think twice.
But it doesn't sound like it outweighs the benefits to me. But then she's saying that obesity has no real link, and or at the very least she's downplaying the link between obesity and disease. So why am I surprised?
Olivia, I'm trying to understand why you posted that comment. I don't want to make any assumptions. I'm not going to assume you did it just to gloat and to make...
She posted it because you said that it's impossible to... You've been saying that, not that it's impossible to lose weight, but that weight loss in general isn't very sustainable, and yet she's pointing out that, well, I've done this, so you're wrong. Maybe don't post such broad statements and people won't feel the need to post this stuff. I don't understand how the fat acceptance community likes to say that no one can maintain a weight after weight loss, or at the very least they use that like 98% bullshit, and then get upset when people are like, well, I was able to do it. At least if they responded with, well, then you're part of the 2% and my point still stands, then at the very least they're being consistent with their argument. But to get offended that someone's saying it is just, it's like that you have been making these broad statements. They are countering your statements with their experience. I don't understand why you don't get that.
Other people feel bad about themselves because perhaps you had very good intentions. However, I'd like to point out a few things. Firstly, just because you managed to do it doesn't really mean anything. I'm talking about evidence, you're talking about personal experience. I'm talking about everyone, you're talking about just you. And those are very, very different things. Secondly,
at least she's arguing that point. I still disagree with her, but at least she's keeping to a consistent narrative.
as I have pointed out on many occasions, whilst weight loss is possible in the short term, in the long term, 95% of people gain back that weight and 2/3 of people end up heavier than when they first started. The evidence shows that the more you lose, the more you gain back. So whilst you're celebrating now, we ought to talk 5 years from now and see how you're feeling about it then. Perhaps keep your comments to yourself next time. Olivia, have you noticed that almost all of my critics tend to refer to me as a woman or babe or something equally as obnoxious because they can't quite handle the fact that I'm a real doctor? Anyway, I'd like to address this comment. That is a complete, utter lie. I know it's a lie that you've been fed by the WHO, by the CDC, and by pretty much every other government organisation, but anyone...
So it's a giant conspiracy. It's a giant... Holy fuck. Like, I mean, I knew that was an underlying implicit claim of the fat acceptance movement, but to hear it said out loud is just fucking insane to me. And I don't think that they're calling you a woman to detract from the fact that you're a doctor. I think they're calling you a woman... and babe is a common thing on the internet that does feel a little bit like they're being condescending, so I do agree with that. But saying that, like, this woman... I don't think it's to detract from the fact that you're a doctor. I think because you are not handling yourself as a medical professional in these, because you just throw these claims out without explaining your reasoning, a lot of the time you don't come across as a medical professional on the internet. You come across as someone that's deeply entrenched in this trendy social movement that hasn't done critical thought given her background, and is just spewing rhetoric all over the place. So you don't present yourself as a professional, so people don't view you as a professional.
Who understands evidence knows it's a lie.
I love, though, that she claims that these organizations that have a variety of professionals with advanced degrees that outline all of this shit don't understand evidence. It's just, like, I understand that she's a doctor, so that's great, but that doesn't mean that she has more knowledge and a better understanding of evidence than the fucking CDC.
Because people die of illnesses in a fat body doesn't mean that their fat body caused them to die of that illness. That's just basic. You don't need a master's in public health to know that. The reason people make these ridiculous statements and lie about it is because there is financial gain involved. There is no evidence.
There is far more financial gain in keeping people fat than getting them to a healthy weight. There is far more financial gain for the fast food industry, for processed foods, for the obesity industry. There's far more money to be made there than with diets. Because the truth is that you don't need all of the fancy diet shit to lose weight. Some of it does help. Some of it is just fucking garbage. But you can lose weight using nothing more than your body weight, walking around your environment, and sticking to whole foods. It's hard, but it can be done without any of the diet industry gadget shit that you want to talk about.
Evidence that being fat causes you to die. None whatsoever.
And there we go with the absolute statements, which already discredits her argument, saying that there is absolutely no evidence when she cannot possibly have looked at all of the evidence in the world, and we know for a fact that there is evidence that obesity leads to premature death. And her saying that there is no evidence just means that she doesn't view it as evidence, which is not something in her favor, the way I think she thinks it is. I swear.
Have you checked out the FAQ section of my website? Because there's a whole bunch of information there about how dieting is bad for you. I'll try and sum it up in the next 45 seconds. Firstly, intentional weight loss is futile in approximately 95% of people who regain the weight and in 2/3 of people who end up heavier than when they first started. But even if it does work for a time, intentional weight loss is associated with a number of serious consequences.
So I just want to address the 95% thing, that people that went on a diet gained the weight back or were even heavier than they started. Here is my question. Did they stick to the diet this entire time and it still just led to weight gain even though they were following the diet to the T 100% of the time? Because if not, then it's not the diet's fault. They fell back into old bad habits and possibly developed even more, and that's why they gained the weight back. It wasn't the diet.
Weight cycling is associated with poorer health outcomes. Intentional weight loss also leads to disordered eating. Disordered eating can lead to eating disorders. Studies have shown that those who do manage to lose a large amount of weight and keep it off often have features of eating disorders. This type of behaviour is considered a problem in thin people, but is rewarded in fat people. For more info, check out my website.
So I'm curious what you mean by features of eating disorders. Because if it's the fact that they are counting calories and they restrict a level of calorie intake, that's not necessarily wrong. And the reason why it would be seen as concerning in thin people but not fat people is that because if thin people are restricting their calories to lose weight when they are already thin, especially if they are underweight, then that would be counterproductive to a healthful outcome. Because being underweight is bad, like being overweight is bad. And so them restricting calories when they are already underweight would just exacerbate the health issue of being underweight. As to where people restricting calories when they are overweight are leading to a better beneficial health outcome because they are losing the excessive weight to get down to the healthy weight category. So I don't really understand how that is wrong. And I think saying that eating disorder behavior, especially when you say it vaguely like this and you don't give specific examples, is a way of sensationalizing that and villainizing doctors, when in reality the eating disorder features that you are talking about are only really eating disorder features when they're done in excessive ways or when they're done inappropriately, as with a person that's already underweight. I'm pretty sure as with most like mental health things, you can display features without having the actual disorder if it's not very severe and if it doesn't impact your everyday life and if it doesn't detrimentally affect your health.
When did I ever say otherwise? I'm talking about weight loss. You're talking about health. Those are two completely different things. Of course.
Yes and no, depends on your weight.
You can do everything in your power to improve your health. That being said, you have absolutely no control over your health. I've been a doctor for almost 20 years and I can assure you that no matter what you do, no matter how quote unquote good you are, you cannot control your health. People who make comments like this don't understand the social determinants of health and how important they are and how much of an impact they make on our lives. I say it time and time again. Health is a privilege, not an achievement. So yes, do what you can to live as healthy a life as you possibly can, but please don't assume for 1 second that will have a major impact on your outcome.
So weight loss can absolutely lead to better health outcomes and better health depending on the weight that you start at when you're aiming for weight loss. There are social factors in contribution to health, especially if you're in a highly polluted area, depending on if you are in a food desert, if you don't have access to medical care. There's definitely social issues around health. I'm not denying that. But let's not pretend that weight isn't a factor at all. And you're going to hear me say this a lot, but this is my ultimate issue with the fat acceptance and fat liberation movement, is they're taking things to extreme. They're saying that there's multiple contributing factors and as a way to detract from the fact that weight is a contributing factor. It's if you're saying, I'm trying to lose weight, but ultimately I'm trying healthy lifestyle changes, and that's what's working for me, so you need to leave me alone and not worry about my weight, I would 100% agree with that. But to say that I already do all these healthy behaviors, and I am just naturally fat, and fat is in no way contributes to health at all, that's when I have an issue with it.
All right, listen up, folks. You can't compare being fat with smoking. Why? Because smoking is an action. It's a doing word. It's a verb.
So is eating. So is eating in excess. So is eating fucking an entire cake.
Being fat is a descriptor. It's an adjective.
Being fat is an accumulation of a variety of behaviors and habits that create the conditions for that type of body. Sometimes there's conditions that can't be controlled, but by and large, for most people, for the vast, vast majority of people, it is 100% within your control to control your weight.
It's not an action, and contrary to popular belief,
being fat is an action. Being fat, especially if you talk to the fat acceptance movement, they're saying being fat is a radical statement. So therefore it is an action, but even ignoring that, being fat is a passive action. Being fat is the result of different behaviors and stuff that have led to that reality. Just because it's used as an adjective doesn't mean that it didn't take actions to get to that adjective. Does that make sense?
it's not a choice. If you want to compare fatness with anything, then you should compare it to baldness, both of which are associated with heart disease.
This isn't the first time I've heard this baldness and fatness thing, except baldness is far more associated with genetics, and it runs in families. Fatness can run in families, but you have to take a look at the behavior sets. Someone where baldness runs in the family can have a complete different set of behaviors that result in the same thing, where being fat and having fatness run in your family, you'll likely see a trend of behaviors and eating habits that lead to that same outcome.
This is the point when everyone says, but you can't help being bald. Yeah, I know. That's the whole point.
The condescension is starting to piss me off.
So why does the whole world think that being fat is bad for your health? I mean, if there's no evidence to actually support this statement, then why does the whole world think it's true? That's not something I can answer in a 1-minute video, but I will tell you this. There are numerous organisations who profit massively from the false narrative that being fat is bad for your health. Insurance companies get to charge you extra.
There's far more that benefit from you eating yourself to death. There's far more that benefit from this body positive movement. By saying, well, not body positive, but fat liberation, fat acceptance, fat positivity movement. By saying, embrace it and eat all the junk food that you want. Hostess is making a hell of a lot more money. McDonald's is making a hell of a lot more money. Taco Bell, Burger King, Wendy's, Dairy Queen, Baskin Robbins. Like, you want to go into this? Let's fucking go into this. So you want to talk about insurance companies? Let's talk about Kraft mac and cheese. You want to talk, and I understand this is a little bit of whataboutism, but I still think that the overall point still stands even without it, that to comment on one and not comment on the other. I'm not saying that there is absolutely no part of the industry that doesn't benefit from you hating your body and trying to make it thinner. There's a bunch of diet aids out there that probably do fuck all. I haven't tried them, but I'm guessing that they don't really do fuck all. But they benefit from making people feel bad. There's a bunch of shapewear that benefits from people trying to achieve a certain body look. Not denying that. But let's take a look at both sides of the coin.
For premiums, drug companies get to sell you drugs, and the diet and wellness industry is worth well over $70 billion a year. Need I go on? Ooh, interesting. Not surprising, but interesting. What you will find nowadays is that more and more allied professionals including pharmacists, and more nurses and doctors are going to be trying to persuade you to take weight loss pills or to have weight loss surgery, even though you go and see them about something completely and utterly unrelated. This has been going on for quite some time, but there are now more and more financial incentives to do so. And as we all know, money talks. If you're not happy about it, you can complain. I don't think it will do much good, but you can always complain. But just want a quiet life? I'm not sure you're living up to your name. Please define overeating. I'm guessing you're going to say it has something to do with calories, maybe something to do with macros. Maybe you'll give me a whole speech about how, calories in equals calories out and calorie deficits and yada, yada, yada. We all need to eat to live. You get that, right? You don't need to smoke to live, but you do need to eat to live. Now, nicotine addiction is a real thing, so I'm not coming down hard on people who smoke. But please don't suggest for 1 second that people are fat because they overeat. And more importantly...
Okay, but you just said nicotine addiction is a real thing. Food addiction is a real thing, too. Food addiction activates the pleasure centers of... food addiction activates the pleasure centers of the brain as well. Again, this feels not like that she doesn't know about it, but like that she's purposely leaving it out. So that's very frustrating. And yeah, we do need to eat to live, but typically what overeating means, and I know that she's not going to like this because it's calorie related, but if you take a look at your basal metabolic rate as well as the calories that you burn, and you eat more calories than that, you are overeating. Now, that if you're underweight, that's a good thing. Just as how if you're eating less than your combined metabolic and calories burned, then you're undereating, but a small level of undereating is good because you can lose weight that way. Just because you're overeating or undereating isn't necessarily bad depending on the circumstance. But for most people, overeating is not a good thing. And you would have to get pretty severe undereating for it to be a bad thing.
Please don't suggest for 1 second that you know the definition of overeating, because nobody knows the definition of overeating.
Again, absolute statements. I'm sorry. I hate absolute statements.
That's because there isn't one.
So unfortunately, the way I have this video cropped, you can't easily see it, but the definition of overeating is eating too much. So there is a definition for overeating, just so we're clear. And then there's more... Oh, nope, just translations. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Also, there's this side thing with overeating. Overeating occurs when an individual consumes more calories in relation to the energy that is expended via physical activity or expelled via excretion, leading to weight gain and often obesity. Overeating is the defining characteristic of binge eating disorder. So, there's your definitions.
What a load of crap. Seriously, what a load of crap. Everybody knows that as you get older, your health deteriorates irregardless of your weight.
It's just regardless, not irregardless. Sorry, I'm gonna be a nitpicking bitch.
So yeah, in 10 years from now, my health won't be as good as it is now, but that's not because I'm fat. That's because...
Fat could exacerbate the natural deterioration, though. And there's ways that you can stay healthy as you get older. Not 100%, but you can be healthier by not smoking, by getting regular exercise, by eating well. I mean, just saying.
Time marches on, my dear, and it waits for no man. Or woman. You don't need to tell me whether I'm right or wrong, because I know. I've actually done the research and, studied this. I've also been a doctor for the last 20 years. So, thanks for your 2 cents, but you can keep the change.
So, thing is, though, is that I'm pretty sure someone had done a deep dive on FatDoctorUK a long time ago. I'm talking a year ago, so I'm afraid I don't remember. I don't think it was any of the typical anti-fat acceptance tubers on here. This was an early video I don't think it was Funty Times or Nadia Nymph or Hotep Flotep or any of those guys. There was someone that did a deep dive on her and found old videos of her where she was promoting weight loss and stuff. So it's interesting that she's like, well, I have 20 years experience. Okay, and up until I think 2 years ago, you were promoting traditional weight loss just like everyone else. So what caused the 180-degree turn? What caused the 180-degree turn? Because you said you've done the research. Well, chances are you did the research before that too. You're a professional doctor. So what is it? And with how much you defend it, to me it suggests that there's something tied to your identity and a personal investment, not just an educational perspective.
Oh my God, enough with the fat around the organs. That is not a real thing. It is made up.
People have... This just seems like she's flat out lying. We've seen doctors show, and there have been pictures, like pictures of actual organs of an obese person versus a thin person, and you can see fat around the organs. So this just seems like a flat out fucking lie. Like this is actually the most disturbing one so far for me.
Maybe you should keep the comments to yourself until you actually know what you're talking about.
And she gives no explanation as to how she can say that it's made up. There's plenty of pictures circulating online if you want to look at, like, healthy weight person's heart versus an obese person's heart, and you can see the fat accumulation around the organ. Same with the liver. Like, how does she just say that it's a flat out lie as a medical professional and then not even explain it?
So I've spent quite a bit of time trying to tell people that being fat does not cause any diseases. And people are like, yeah, but what about heart disease? So then I show them how being fat is actually one of the lowest risks for heart disease. And the biggest risks by far are being male, getting older, and smoking. But then they go, yeah, but all that weight puts extra pressure on your joint. So I patiently explain that that's a load of rubbish and there's no evidence to support that. And then they go, yeah, but cancer. So I make an entire podcast to demonstrate that being fat doesn't increase your risk of cancer. But diabetes, blood pressure.
So before she continues on, I do just want to say, because we took a look at the time when she was talking about joints and the time that she was talking about like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, that sort of thing. And the thing is though is that she doesn't really explain it. She just makes these generalized claims. She does talk a little bit about research in a couple of them, but there are times when she just completely ignores mentioning any research and it's just this open claim that she gives. So again, I think this isn't her being purposefully deceitful. I think she has it in her head that she had already explained this when she didn't really explain it well at all.
Cholesterol, etc., etc., etc. Folks, I have an answer for every single one of these, but before we can even engage in a conversation, you need to learn the difference between causation and association.
I've already talked about the correlation versus causation versus association, whatever you want to call it. I've already talked about it so far in this video, so we're just going to move on.
So, what exactly? I mean, clearly you did a Google search and you found a Lancet article, but what's that got to do with anything? I'm not trying to argue with the findings of that study. I'm well aware that being fat shaves years off your life. It's just that it has nothing to do with being fat and everything to do with the way that the world treats fat people.
And here we go. I actually kind of wish that I don't think it would follow any reasonable level of ethics, but I wish there was a way to show that fat people who are treated well and fat people who, as they say, are oppressed or whatever, and we'll just go with the general society, how they're treated in society now. And I'm not denying that there's a level probably of harassment, there's a level of having to advocate for themselves more at the doctor, whatever. While I think there would be a level of reduced risk, I think that the level of risk would still be fairly high for both individuals because they're both obese. This whole thing of the lurking variable in this correlation between obesity and health risks is that fat people aren't treated well. But here's the thing, like, there's plenty of people that aren't treated well that have higher stresses than a lot of the fat people that we've seen here on TikTok at the very least. they probably have less risk than those that are obese. Probably. Granted, this is just me speculating. But still, she says that, it's because of how fat people are treated with no real evidence.
Healthcare providers refuse to treat their fat patients the same way they treat their thin ones. Anti-fat bias within the education system, social services, the criminal justice system, and amongst employers make people who live in larger bodies lives much more difficult. We earn less money. We live in poorer neighbourhoods. We don't have access to good healthcare. We die younger. That's the whole flipping point of why I'm here making TikTok videos. Get with the program. I literally get DMs in my inbox telling me that I deserve to die. I get called every single name under the sun. People have turned me...
Welcome to being on the internet to a degree. One, you are rude, and I don't think that means that you deserve death threats or being called names. I want to be clear, I don't think that she deserves that. But to a certain extent, welcome to being on the internet. When I was very early, this was back in 2009, 2010, posting my first Let's Play videos on YouTube. I got a couple of death threats, a couple of rape threats, people calling me stupid and a narcissistic bitch for posting these things. Like, it's not unusual. There's people that have nothing better to do in their lives than tear other people down. That doesn't mean that you are a special victim because you are fat. Just so we're clear.
Into memes. They have made YouTube videos about me. People have threatened...
Okay, real clear though, we don't make YouTube videos about you because you're fat. We make YouTube videos about you because you, as a medical professional, are deliberately omitting information or outright fucking lying. And because you are a medical professional, you hold more weight in your words. And there are young teens that watch you and see that you are a doctor and therefore think that what you say has significant legitimacy to it. Even when you full out fucking lie. Like about the fat around the organs. So, and I wish she still had her website posted so I could see what these research articles that she posts are.
My family, they have threatened me. I have received genuine death threats, although I
And I'm genuinely sorry for that. I don't think that should happen.
haven't taken any of them seriously. Just look at all the nasty comments and trolls that I get on this TikTok page. And yet you think I need to be less rude. I'm actually used to hearing this kind of thing from white privileged folk.
Of course, now she's bringing race into it. All right. But here's the thing, this is the same level of argument that Marissa has, where they've received really hateful messages, death threats, what have you, and for that I am truly sorry, but there are people that are genuinely not attacking you and simply arguing your points. They are not attacking you as a person, they are arguing your points and you treat them like shit. You must create the delineation between the trolls and those with genuine opposition towards you. And if you don't want to, I mean, fine, whatever. On your TikTok page, you want to turn off comments, whatever. I get so frustrated when they give very outlandish opinions or respond very rudely to people that are genuinely just giving opposition to their argument and they can't be civil. And then they throw this victim card out as a way to excuse their behavior to people that have not given them death threats, have not been rude to them, simply argued their point of view.
People seem to think that it's okay for me to be abused by whomever, but I am...
Oh, for fuck's sake, get off your victim cross. No one thinks that it's okay for you to be abused. No one thinks that. To a certain extent, though, most people that have been on the internet for the past fucking decade or longer understand that people are shitty and you're gonna get nasty comments. It's not that anyone condones it, it's simply that you can't police everyone on the internet and you have to learn how to either block them, delete their comments, what have you, and not overgeneralize it to everyone that fucking watches you that has an opposing opinion. It's called being a fucking adult.
Never allowed to defend myself and stand up for myself. I'm never allowed to...
You can stand up for yourself. Oh my god. So there's a difference between standing up to yourself and dishing back the same energy as someone who was giving you death threats or being just as rude to you. But the people that we've seen you being rude towards were giving an opposing opinion. Barring maybe one or two so far that we've seen.
Get angry or upset or hurt or feel ashamed because I'm fat, right? So I deserve it. Enough with this post-lockdown weight loss bullshit. We have all spent the last 18 months going through an extreme period of stress.
And sometimes people want to do that with a complete lifestyle pivot change because of what lockdown taught them. Don't get me wrong, it was stressful, but I have learned to prioritize hobbies and things that make me happy because of the pandemic lockdown. And part of that is getting healthy. So that way I can do everything that I want to do. That what people do on their pages is none of your fucking business. How about that? How about rather than telling people to stop, if you don't... And this comes directly after the one that she said that she got harassment for expressing herself and being rude, and yet you want to control what other people fucking do. Pick a lane. Pick a fucking lane.
Stress makes you gain weight. Leave your bodies alone and they will eventually settle back into their set point weight. Or alternatively, you could go and pay someone to help you to lose weight. Studies show that any weight you lose, you will regain within the next 5 years.
I hate this defeatist attitude too. I hate that she's perpetuating this that would discourage anyone that tries to make a lifestyle change. Maybe they're insecure and they look at these fat positive, fat activist stuff to feel okay in that moment and maybe move on. But shit like this keeps people from taking healthy behaviors on by adjusting their behaviors to try to be healthier, because then of people like this that are like, well, you're never going to lose weight anyway.
Furthermore, studies show that 2/3 of you who try and lose weight post-lockdown are going to end up heavier within the next 5 years. It is a complete, utter waste of time. And furthermore, the only reason you keep hearing about the importance of losing weight post-lockdown is because people are trying to make money out of you.
Not always. There was the pandemic 15 where everyone gained some weight too. So sometimes people are like, well, get back to where you were pre-pandemic and try to reestablish normalcy in your life. I swear to God. So we're at an hour. It might be a little less once I go through my editing process. But we're going to stop it here. We have not even made it through a month of her videos. So it looks like this is going to be a bigger project than I thought. So we're just going to keep trekking along though, because I have a lot to comment on. This is less than a month later and she already seems a little bit more combative than she was before in the first video that we saw. So we're going to keep going through, keep watching her videos and see where we end up. But that is all I have for today. Thank you for watching and I will see you next time.